This is George Conway on George Conway Explains It All to Sarah Longwell. Of course, that's not Sarah Longwell on the right. For whatever reason, she's taking a sabbatical. There's the full title. And there's the date it was posted, March 7th. And there's the link up at the top. But here's how the segment starts. And ironically, most of these shows, unfortunately, it's just a whole lot of talk that doesn't get you anywhere. Except that this show makes the point that Amy Coney Barrett and even Justice Roberts appear they might be cracking on the side of the Constitution. Well, good luck with that. Maybe Amy Coney Barrett, but Justice Roberts should be removed for skirting the Constitution. It's not as hard as one would think. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment can work as a summons to the Congress by any one member writing a prosecutorial Section 3 of the 14th Amendment complaint in the form of a resolution to be voted on. Now, the ironic thing is, very probably, the person that the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment resolution is the subject of doesn't have an opportunity to defend themselves because the public record is indefensible. If it is enough to be a Section 3 of the 14th Amendment violation to their oath, their office, the rebellious nature of the Constitution, then they can't stop it. In the case of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, something as simple as failing to take action to promote justice, domestic tranquility, and to form a more perfect union could be deemed as unconstitutional and a violation of their oath to support and defend the Constitution. So here's how it starts.
If the president does something illegal, it's for the court to say, no, that's illegal. Leaving apart the question of enforcement. The proper mechanism is impeachment and removal. That's what the president... You laugh. That's the way this is supposed to work.
And he's right and he's wrong. Impeachment is not the only method to remove people. Impeachment is for high crimes and misdemeanors. You know, what Trump is doing is not always a high crime or misdemeanor. As a matter of fact, it really isn't. What it is a rebellion to the Constitution of the United States. Now, later on in here, there's a quote from, there's a piece from the Jessica Denson Lights On video where they're stuck on this insurrection shit. And there was no insurrection. There is no insurrection. Insurrection doesn't matter. Insurrection must be judicially determined. It normally involves force. You have to be someone who has actually run a military operation in force to take over the government. And that is take over the government. Trump did not do that. He incited a riot. It may have been an incitement to an insurrection, but it never got to the insurrection. People convinced him to call it off, and the vote continued later that day. But they're stuck on insurrection. Nobody knows how to look at the rebellion component. it was a rebellion. He rebelled against Article 2, Section 1, Clause 1, in that he refused to leave office. He came up with a fake elector scheme. That's a rebellion to the Constitution and the laws, congressional laws of the United States, as defined in 18 U.S.C. 2383. I keep saying it over and over again. So, you're welcome to go watch this whole thing. Sarah Longwell's not in this one. I am not a fan of Sarah Longwell because she's not an attorney. She asks ding-dong questions, much like Jessica Denson takes a ding-dong position. It's wrong. Jessica Denson keeps claiming that President Trump, Mr. Trump, I don't want to call him President Trump because he's not. He's Mr. Trump is illegal, an illegal president. Well, no, he's not. He's an illegitimate president. He is legally sworn in. He was illegally declared the winner of the election, and then was legally sworn in. So that's a dichotomy of sorts, but that's what it is. So he is the legally sworn in illegitimate president. But until Congress raises the issue of his constitutional ineligibility as defined in Trump v. Anderson, 23-719, and charges a prosecution of a resolution directed at Trump to call for the amnesty vote, he is the constitutionally ineligible, illegitimate president who has been legally sworn in. Once the Congress declared him the winner, the Supreme Court Chief Justice was obligated to swear him in. At that point, the Chief Justice cannot say, I cannot swear you in because you're illegitimate. He had to follow what Congress directed. The problem is with Congress, not with anyone but. Any one member can raise this issue. And when they do, it will force the entire Congress to vote on it. And if the two-thirds majority is not met to excuse the disability created by Trump's own conduct in whatever various ways the resolution describes the conduct, then he's disqualified. Then his presidency becomes illegal if he seems to stay there, wants to stay there and continue to be president. Then an Article 3 court, a federal judge, can then begin replacing department heads with previous department heads and order the marshals to remove Trump from the White House. Everybody's scared to do that. And in the end, this next clip, George Conway intimates that is exactly what's going on. So here is where George talks about, it is the last of the interview. He talks about how everybody is playing Chicken Little. The meteor is heading for the planet, and everybody's sitting there looking at each other, and they're all afraid to take any action or speak up.
For this, are there remedies? I mean, the remedies I would think would be to speak out, would be not to represent the evil man who is seeking to destroy the system upon which your profession is based.
Right.
And to do pro bono work, to preserve the rule of law, as some firms are doing. That's the solution. But yeah, I mean, but it's part of an overall. That would be great if we don't have that culture of people just saying, "Basta, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to show some courage. I'm going to show some moral courage." We have this situation, and hopefully it'll change. But where people are just looking, it's like the prisoner's dilemma.
Right.
Like, if I go out and do this, I'm going to get smashed. So I'm just going to sit here. And then everybody else does the same things. They look, it's like, well, he's just sitting there. Why should I do anything? She's just sitting there. Why should I do anything? And there's and it would be great if people could engage in collective action to say,
right,
let's all go out there, let's all hold hands and jump together. But that's really, I mean, what we've seen at the Republican Party level, what we've seen over the past 7 or 8 years is it's really hard to get people to do that.
Very hard.
Even fucking Republican senators who have 6-year terms don't have the cojones to do that. And aren't going to run again.
Yes.
They're just a bunch of pussies. Shameful. Excuse my French.
I want to ask
And, that's the crux of the whole issue. Not Jessica Denson. Nobody, Midas Touch, Bulwark, nobody gets it. That these people are afraid. They want to keep their $175,000 a year salary and their life. They don't want to be looking around their corner as to who's trying to attack them, shoot them, kill them, because Trump supporters are crazy. So, along with removing Trump from office, the new president would need to activate the Insurrection Act in anticipation that there's going to be people who are going to come up out of the woodwork and want to do violence, because that's what Trump has trained them to do. Here's the problem. We've let this go on so long that there's a culture of we can just do this, because we're Caucasian. We can just do this. And we're going to maintain even though the law says otherwise. They don't want the law anymore because it's aimed at fairness. It's aimed at justice, domestic tranquility, and forming a more perfect union. The majority of the Republican states that put this big red wave across the country, it looks like it's a big red wave, is just all empty space. It's a lot of rural America. And there's a book called White Rural Rage. And that's what it's all about. Minorities do not live in rural communities because they can't. They'll be run out or killed or dragged with a chain behind a truck. This is the real America. And no one will seem to enforce the law when the insurrection statute, 18 U.S.C. 2383, provides for prosecution of anyone who supports the insurrection. Provides for them a $1,000 minimum fine, 10-year jail sentence, loss of voting rights and office holding rights, the same as Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. And there's a question as to whether it is self-executing also. Now, if it's referred to by Congress in a Section 3 of the 14th Amendment prosecution, then they can't determine the guilt of a party who is supporting an insurrection But they can identify a person or a party who is in rebellion by identifying the rebellion. And that's a little difficult. And it requires that, legal minds, people with law degrees, know how to think legally. Now, I don't know if this guy on the left, JBL, whatever his name is, I don't know if he's an attorney or not. But we have far too many people on YouTube. This guy, Brian Tyler Cohen, Mark Elias is an attorney, but he's about as bad as they come because he waves his arms around more than he waves around legal theory. He reports on what things are going on, and he may appear and defend lawsuits, but there's no strategy. He has no strategy. You got Legia Miller. She's an attorney, but my God, what is she, a transactional or historical attorney? Because she's not a prosecutor. She did say the other day that it is her job to provide solutions, despite some of her followers saying it's not her job to provide a solution. Well, she said it herself. But these people don't have solutions. They don't know how to get up underneath the Constitution. It's right there in Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. It is the biggest catch-all legal phrase that there is. And the Supreme Court boiled it down to what it says. You take an oath to support and defend the Constitution, then you engage in an act of insurrection or rebellion, and you are barred from office. There's nothing in the middle. There's nothing else needed. There's no court, no indictment, no decision, no filing, no nothing. Nothing more. That's what it says, nothing more. The problem is enforcement of it is by the hand of Congress. Exclusively by the hand of Congress. And that is the problem. Until Congress acts, it's just another violated law. So let's finish up with what George and JBL is saying.
A delicate question. Dream with me for a moment, George. Dream with me that 4 years from now, your favorite Democratic politician has just been elected president. Okay, fill in the blank, right?
I don't think I have a favorite Democratic politician at this point.
Pick one, right? Should they do the same?
George was a Republican.
There you go. Governor Spanberger. Yeah, you see what I did there, Sarah? Has been elected president. Should she do the same sort of retaliation to the bad guy law firms who participated in all this?
No.
Or should she not? Because, so this, I guess, the question, right? Do you retaliate like this to establish a tit for tat? So the idea is nobody does this in the future, or do you? No, we're going back to the norms, which didn't actually help the Biden administration at all.
Okay, but let me say this: you don't do that.
Okay.
That being said,
hey everyone, thanks for watching the show. If you want to catch the rest of this,
And here's the bottom line to the rest of that answer. Anybody who takes an oath to support and defend the Constitution and then acts in rebellion to it, even as an attorney, can be prosecuted in Congress under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, and the end result is they can never hold public or state office ever again. They can still be an attorney. They're not disbarred, but they can never run for office or hold office. That's what should be done. That's what needs to be done, and that's how it should be done. Now, everybody's busy begging for money, trying to drag you to Patreon where you pay a subscription for basically idiot speak. These people don't know what they're talking about. Longwell's not an attorney. This other guy's not an attorney. Conway may be an attorney. Maybe they're paying him for his appearances. I don't know. Most of these people don't read their emails. I know that emails have been sent to Bulwark. They have received them. They have opened them. And you don't ever hear them speak about it. Jessica Denson is on Blue Sky. She noticed the page at sadpack.com. She asked that her name be removed from the various places because she thought it was libel. Well, she's flat out wrong. She's not an attorney. And frankly, she shouldn't be trying to give legal advice. She's the one who's wrong. But the bottom line is, she learned a little bit from some of it. She keeps saying, well, even a failure is a win. Except that you can't say certain things and not be accurate and precise in your language. And that's what Professor Evan Bernick says in this next clip. Here is Jessica Denson with Professor Evan Bernick talking about two things, but the only one that's important is the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment issue, which they get halfway there and then he bugs out without the final detail. I don't know why they've got a photo of Jasmine Crockett on it. I don't know why they've got a photo of Bernie Sanders on it. There's the URL at the top. You can stop at the ampersand T = 240S to get the whole video. There's the full title of it. And there's the date it was published. Now, unfortunately, Jessica Denson is the voice in the wilderness hollering about Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. You know, the problem is, if you just say, well, the bread is in the oven, nobody is alarmed. But if you say the bread is in the oven, it was made with gasoline, and now it's on fire, then people get the message. She doesn't know how to speak properly, legally. She keeps saying Trump is an illegal president. Well, he's not illegal. He's illegitimate. What was illegal was for Congress to certify his votes because he was constitutionally ineligible, and the Constitution speaks to the ineligibility, but it is through Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. The other three constitutional ineligibilities, that being age, 14-year residency, and natural-born status, are hard and fast. The Section 3 of the 14th Amendment constitutional ineligibility is contingent. And it's contingent on either insurrection or rebellion. And as said previously all the time, insurrection is going to require a judicial determination, whereas rebellion simply requires identification of the law violated, the public record of how it was violated, and how it was actually rebellion and not mistake. So this is going to jump to about 4 minutes in. I'm not a fan of Jessica Denson. She's just not talking about it properly in a legal sense. But then Professor Bernick jumps in and says the relevant things.
In our federal government with the actions of Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and his vice president, J.D. Vance. Now, you talked about new legislation, but that's not really necessary if we're talking about the Section 3 conversation, is it? Because Donald Trump is currently disqualified. The only mechanism per the pure language of Section 3 to remove that
And he's not currently disqualified. He is currently constitutionally ineligible. He won't be disqualified until Congress brings the issue up and votes on it. Right now, he's occupying the office in a state of constitutional ineligibility, contingent constitutional ineligibility, because he meets the 3 hard and fast. He meets the age, he meets the 14-year requirement, and he meets the natural born status. What he doesn't meet is the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment violation, which can only be raised by Congress. That's what the Trump v. Anderson ruling was all about. States cannot raise it, and they cannot adjudicate it for a federal candidate. They can do so for a state candidate, not a federal one. So there she goes with the first sloppy language.
disqualification is by a 2/3 amnesty vote. And by merely raising this is what gets me, Evan, is that any one of these Democratic lawmakers could simply acknowledge it. Just verbalize it, talk about it, walk out.
Except that's not what activates it. What activates it is actually filing a resolution based on the specific issues and problems with the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment violation, whatever it is. Stop talking about it. You know, this is what's wrong. You can't just keep talking about it because people talk about it. They be talking, and nobody's taking action. Well, action has been taken because on, December 26th, a lawsuit was actually filed to force a member of Congress to call for the amnesty vote. It's been sitting in abeyance right now in the D.C. District Federal Court, and the court has recently been asked to get off their duff, assign it, and provide a summons so that they can move forward. Denson has done nothing but run her mouth incorrectly.
Out of the State of the Union and have a press conference on why Donald Trump is a constitutionally illegitimate president. And that would establish in the public discourse his illegitimacy and require the need for amnesty to clear him of that disqualification.
Except it doesn't. The public discourse have nothing to do with it. Just like the public discourse has nothing to do with counting the electoral votes. This is a matter specifically for Congress. You need to take your angst out on Congress. It is Congress that you must push and trigger. Don't take it to the people. Protests do nothing. The people don't even know what they're protesting for, except they just don't want Trump. This is where you're just wrong, Jessica.
Yes, that's a very important distinction. In talking about Section 3 enforcement by Congress, we are not talking, or we shouldn't be talking, as if Congress needs to do something before Section 3 kicks in, and we can say that we have an unconstitutional executive. Instead...
But, I'm sorry, that is what the Supreme Court has said. Now, Professor Bernick is an attorney. He's a legal professor, law professor. He should know better. Section 3, when he says kicks in, what are you talking about? Section 3 is applicable. But until it's actualized by some actual filing, if you murder someone on the street, the murder statute kicks in. But until you are caught and indicted for the murder, nothing happens. You have to be caught and indicted. Well, right now, Trump is not caught nor technically indicted, although there is no indictment. All that needs to be done is some member of Congress draw up the legal prosecution in the form of a resolution identifying what the Supreme Court said and the conduct violated. There's a sample resolution at sadpac.com. Let's go on.
The point of raising an amnesty bill is to draw attention to the fact that in order to have an insurrectionist hold any office under the United States, you need a two-thirds majority of Congress to say, yes, we're okay with this. So an amnesty bill isn't about saying that Donald Trump, now, in virtue of what Congress has just done, is not constitutionally eligible for the office. It's designed to draw attention to the fact that he is currently violating the Constitution by being in office, and Congress would have to do something in order to change that.
Now, this is where he's confused. The amnesty bill, which is nothing more than a simple resolution under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, as I've so said, doesn't raise attention to anything. It is what disqualifies him when he fails to meet the two-thirds vote required to excuse the disability that Bernick here is talking about. So he's confusing himself because it is conclusive. It is the removal of the president by disqualification to the office he is holding, which is a removal from the office. It is the actualization of the bar to office specified in Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. Let's go on.
Realistically, two-thirds majority of Congress, not going to be easy to come by. However, talking about realism, what is it legally possible to do, institutionally possible
But
to
that's
do?
in our favor. Just to clarify, two-thirds being hard to come by is in the favor of the Constitution, right? Because you're not going to get that very high threshold to remove the disqualification.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
So really, failure on any level is a success.
Failure on any level is a success because it keeps us talking about the fact that we have an unconstitutional.
No, it doesn't keep us talking about anything. It legally removes Trump from office. He is constitutionally, at that point, barred and disqualified when he's unable to meet the two-thirds vote. Even if they refuse to bring the resolution to the floor for a vote, then by operation of law, it's a no vote. It's a no vote across the board. They're never going to reach the two-thirds majority. Well, unless the Democrats vote to keep Trump, they're highly unlikely to reach the two-thirds majority required to excuse the disability in both houses. This is where, unfortunately, Bernick himself is confused.
Person at the head of the executive branch.
So this is something that the Democrats could be doing right now. And if we can kind of just bring this out of the academic discussion and to real life and what these politicians, these people who seem to be, especially on the Democratic side, so prone to playing by the rules when the other side is just throwing the rule book out the window and setting everything on fire. Can you just give me your sense, both as a constitutional scholar and just as someone who is living as we're literally seeing democracy go up in flames, on what these politicians should be thinking about what's acceptable and what's normal to do right now along these lines?
Right now, the executive branch is not only pushing the boundaries of the legally possible, it is running roughshod over them as quickly and, if we can call it, creatively as it can, as fast as it can.
Maybe deviously, huh?
As deviously, right. If we are not prepared to respond in kind, if we're not prepared to get creative, to do things that at first blush you may think, well, Section 3 enforcement, he's already in office. What are we supposed to do about that? We risk closing ourselves off of a number of options that, yes, they have a low
And this is what I don't understand myself. Can you not read? A bar to office is a bar to office. It doesn't matter if you're already in office or not. If you trigger the bar to office, you are self-removing yourself. Now, that's where quo warranto could come in, but it's not needed. Because quo warranto on a Section 3 of the 14th Amendment prosecution would end up right back in front of Congress anyway. So if Congress does the amnesty vote, the final sentence of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, and Trump fails to meet the threshold of 2/3, it just takes one house. If he misses in one house and there's no chance of getting it in both houses, then it's over. There's nothing to keep talking about. He's removed from office.
probability of working, but they don't put us in the position of just accepting a continuously lawless state of affairs as normal. Every opportunity we have to say, no, they can't do this. Constitutionally, it is illegitimate for them to do this, that we can think of, we've got to seize on. We've got to take advantage of. Because we know that they are trying on the other side to think of any devious means that they can to legitimize themselves.
Professor Bernard, they absolutely are. And I want to get to, speaking of any ways to legitimize themselves, something that your former colleague, former co-author of the original meaning of the 14th Amendment, Randy.
Now, the rest of the videos time is spent talking about how his former colleague and co-author of this book is interpreting Section 1 of the 14th Amendment as to birthright citizenship. So that's not the subject of this video. You're welcome to go watch the entire Jessica Denson video. This is all that was said that's relevant to the Section 3 issue from an actual legal scholar, supposedly, and even he gets it wrong. He doesn't understand it's already conclusive. It is conclusive. And he does say, we have to try something. Chris Hayes said we have to try something. But it's not trying it. It's doing it. You need to just go march in and do it. Somebody needs to file a resolution. And my guess is, like George Conway said, nobody's going to do that. It will take a court order to order them to go back and cover that step that's required by the Supreme Court and the Constitution. Here's a clip from one of our earlier videos where Michael Cohen relays that Marianne Barry to John Avlon, who was running for Congress at the time, told him before Trump ran for office the first time to stop him because he was effing stupid. Boy, did she get that right. Okay, here's the interview with John Avlon, who was the CNN reality check host for a long time, now running for Congress. He's married to Margaret Hoover, the real Hoover, or Hoover's niece or something like that. And I'm going to try and go straight to the part where Cohen tells a story that Mary Ann Berry, federal judge, told him Trump was fucking stupid and he's going to embarrass the family. Federal appellate judge.
Yeah, so the answer is I didn't know. I've actually never been upstairs to the bedroom in the triplex. I've only been on the first floor, which is the main floor of the triplex. I had heard from others that he had a fascination towards Adolf Hitler. In fact, it was his sister, Judge Barry, who had said it to me, that he had a fascination. She had said that, well, when she found out, for example, that Donald was running for the presidency, she said to me, Michael, you need to make this stop. And I said, Judge, you're about the only one that he's really afraid of. Like, definitely afraid of. All right? You would have to be the one. Ivanka, Don, and Eric came to my office and asked me to help to stop this 2016, in 2015, his announcement after he made those Mexico statements and so on. And he wasn't stopping for anything, which I explained to him. But she said, he's a deeply flawed individual. He ascribes to like the ideology of Hitler. He goes, but then she said to me, but worse than that, he's fucking stupid. And that's the judge who said that to me, just like that. He's fucking stupid, and he's going to embarrass the entire family. No, that's what she said. I'm not joking. I'm not even trying to be comical. She dropped the F-bomb straight off the rip, and so on. And it's true. We're seeing it. In fact, one time, and I wrote this in my book, Disloyal, that I was sitting with Trump and the general manager of Mar-a-Lago, who happens to be of German descent, and we were talking about an issue that had just taken place. I think it was Celine Dion had to cancel the New Year's, and they paid her over $1 million to appear and so on because she was having an issue with her throat. This is early on. And during our conversation about something which was obviously important, he stops the conversation and says to the general manager, he goes, I was just thinking, I bet your family chased Michael's family through the Red Forest. And I was like, boss, my father's a Holocaust survivor. He goes, yeah, that's why I'm bringing it up. I bet you that your family chased his family through the Red Forest. And I didn't know what to say. The general manager wanted to climb up his own ass and die because he's a decent, good man. He really is. He's like central casting for what you would want at a place like Mar-a-Lago, right? I mean, a really good man, and he didn't know what to say either. But thinking about that in retrospect, the fact that Donald even knows about the Red Forest and was able to equate that, to me, certainly validated what his sister had said years later, that he had a fascination with Adolf Hitler. Yeah.
And there you have it. I don't know if it's true or not, but it makes for a nice story. The real story is the eugenics. How can people be so stupid, so gullible, to think we need the reality TV star as the president? They don't have a clue what it takes to run the country. They're not even thinking about that. And that's like people constantly attributing gas prices, food prices to the president. Only in a small degree. What causes inflation and food prices? Cost of diesel fuel. You need diesel fuel, you need trucks to truck all them food and goods and services to wherever it's going. The supermarkets, the Walmarts, and the cost of diesel is a price that has to slide down the chain onto the grocery or package shelves. People don't know how to think like that. Biden doesn't know how to explain what's going on. He's a bad communicator. And here we are. So, this video was recorded on, and you can go, watch the entire video if you want. At the beginning of this clip, the URL was up there. You can stop at the ampersand T equals, I think it was like 2401, because that's where it jumps to. You can just take that, all the rest of it behind that off, and video will start from the beginning. Or you can start the video and then slide the little red bar here at the bottom all the way to the beginning, which will run the whole video. This was before the election, and I think it was before the election. And the prophecy was there that Trump's second administration was just going to be a calamity. Nothing about it is funny. Nothing about it is normalized. Nothing about it makes any sense. Trump has been a little idiot all his life, from birth. And people just try to normalize it because he's like 80 years old now, and they're trying to make sense of his senselessness. The page up behind me here at sadpack.com has the method which Congress can use to just remove his entire administration, because it was never legitimate, because Trump violated the Constitution in January 6th, 2021, when he tried to stay in power with his fake elector scheme and made that speech on the ellipse that sent the rioters to the Capitol. Not only is Trump effing stupid, Congress is effing stupid. Not only are they effing stupid, they're afraid. Now, afraid is a better explanation than stupid. However, they've got some real nerve to get up on TV and the media and recite what Trump is doing and how he's stealing from the American people and blah, blah, blah. Who are they talking to? Well, the American people can't do anything. They went out to the polls and they voted. And here's the deal. The election was rigged. It was plain and simply rigged. Not from the way of you would think of rigged, but from the way of suppression. They suppressed all the minority votes, created new laws to stop minorities from voting. It was Jim Crow all over again. And not only that, sadpack.com has links to proof that it was all rigged statistically, that there's anomalies, that votes just start changing at a certain level. You go there and read the page and watch some of the videos and you'll see. But here's a clip from Jeffrey Sachs up next, where he's talking to the European Union. It was posted like February 25th or something like that. Late February, I believe. And he says these are not bright people. They keep talking, the echo, about the Constitution and the rule of law. And yet they're not following it themselves. It's real simple. All it takes is one person to file a resolution, and that makes it official. At that point, if Trump and people can't defend it, and they can't, there is no defense to the facts, then the only question is, does Congress vote? If Congress refuses to vote, if for instance the Speaker refuses to bring the vote to the floor, that's the same as causing a no vote from everyone, which is the same as enforcing the disability of the bar to office, which is the same as throwing him out of office. It's not like you can ignore the law and it will work to your favor. You ignore the law at your peril. But here's the bottom line. The Democrats will keep talking about how we don't have any majority. Well, they don't have a 2/3 majority. So yes, Democrats are the majority because there is no 2/3 majority from the Republicans. So the minority is the majority. The minority, the 1/3 minority who could bring this resolution, actually one person is all that's needed, that vote automatically, by law, by operation of law, will end Trump's presidency. Now, good luck trying to get him out. But at that point, once Congress has voted, once there is a solid resolution by Congress, with or without the vote, you can go to a federal judge who at that point can rule on the issue of whether the resolution contained legally sufficient, constitutionally pertinent violations and or violations of constitutional congressional laws of a sufficient nature to make the vote or non-vote valid, constitutionally valid. They don't have to vote, but they won't make the vote to keep him. The operand is it is officially a part of the public register. And when it does that, when that happens, Trump is then disqualified. Then he's disqualified. You have others like Jessica Denson who are out there flailing her arms around, trying to talk about Congress didn't enforce Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. No, they did not. And until they do, he's only constitutionally ineligible. Now, Congress screwed up. The illegality is not the presidency of Trump. The illegality is Congress counting constitutionally not regularly given votes of a candidate who is constitutionally ineligible. If he's constitutionally ineligible, his votes are not regularly given if and until Congress votes to remove the disability. The disability is the bar to office. People can't seem to understand how this works, and I don't get it. But, well, yeah, I do get it. They're just stupid. This is the human brain, which is nothing more than a monkey brain, which is actually the primate brain. And there are different primates. Some of the primates are intelligent. Some of the primates are just instinctive monkeys. And there are humans the same way. They're just tribal. They don't think because they can't think, because they can't analyze things. The war in Ukraine is a prime geopolitical, historical example. Ukraine was settled by the Romans. They wanted that beautiful arable land to grow crops and what have you not. And it's not a big part of Roman history. But the Romans, sailed their ships over there and settled Ukraine. They ran into the Neanderthals. The Neanderthals were all throughout Europe. The Romans were pretty much southern Europe. So anyway, the Romans are a different breed of human. And people want to think that all people are the same. But we're not. They're not. Certain humans are more human than other humans. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, certain humans are benevolent and intelligent, while other humans are tribal and viscerally aggressive. That would be Neanderthal DNA. The MAOA gene, the WTF1 gene. MAOA is aggression, WTF1 is gullibility. When you combine the two, you have stupid people who want to fight. It doesn't sound like it makes sense, but it makes perfect sense. You have to understand genetics are as different as people that walk the planet. You have primates who are violent, and you have primates who are benevolent. The bonobos are an intelligent, peaceable type of primate, monkey, ape. The chimpanzees are violent. They're extremely violent. They're territorial and extremely violent. If a group of chimpanzees run into each other and they don't know each other, there is going to be an immediate fight. If they're on their territory, they're going to do their best to kill all the other ones. And if there are females, they're going to take the females, kill the babies, and go look it up yourself. Go study some primate behaviors. It's not all, it's not all what people think about monkeys and apes. There's some very vicious apes, and there's some very benevolent apes. Gorillas aren't as vicious as you think. They're rather intelligent. They will tolerate humans. They don't immediately attack you. Jane Goodall lived with gorillas for years, and they got along just fine. I mean, literally. They became friends, and they got along just fine. She stayed on her side. They stayed on their side. You don't want to think that humans are the same like that, but they are. Now, here's Jeffrey Sachs. Unfortunately, his ideology is just politely delusional, because somehow he thinks that people are going to be rational and all just want to get along, kumbaya. His story and his storytelling is 100% accurate and correct. But what he fails to understand is that there are certain humans that are beasts. The Romans called the Neanderthals beasts. And you're never going to make sense to them. The only thing that's going to make sense to them is to steal what you have. So Sachs is living in a fantasy world. That's him on the left, and of course there's Trump on the right. There's a URL at the top. You can stop at the T equals 2040 because that's where it's going to jump to. This speech by Sachs at the EU Parliament is just, he's spot on. But he's dreaming. Europe has never gotten along like it's getting along today. It's never been homogeny. They've always been at war, fighting and killing each other in Europe, where the rest of the world has just been, pretty much getting along. Now, that sounds ridiculous, but, history goes further back than the Ukraine War. After the Romans drove the Neanderthals across the Dnieper River, that north and east, that area, which was primarily swamp at that time, that became Moscow. And St. Petersburg. That's where they gathered and grouped and lived. The Neanderthals were not allowed pretty much in what is today Ukraine. And the Romans actually settled Ukraine, and that's why the Ukrainians are highly intelligent. That's why they're kicking the Russians' butts. They made the mistake of joining the Soviet Union because they were separate before Russia, before the Soviet Union became the Soviet Union. You need to just go look up the history of it. And then they said, oh, these creatures are crazy. And they wanted out. And when the Soviet Union fell apart, they took their shot to get out. And the Dnieper River is the demarcation line, which they basically became Ukraine. Well, Ukrainians were all the intelligent and brains and industry, aerospace, and everything that made Russia Russia is in Ukraine. And Putin decided, oh, we let all the brains get away. I want all that back. And then when they discovered that there was oil and gas under that very area that Putin has now claimed and he wants control of, and the economic zone into the Black Sea and into the water surrounding, it's all full of oil and natural gas. Also, there's rare earth minerals, and now today, this has become the subject of the real reason the war started. In 2013, at that point, Exxon and Mobil were separate companies. Now they're Exxon Mobil. And Shell had all cut contracts to develop the oil fields of Ukraine, oil and gas fields. And Putin, and it's sweet crude, not sour. Russia has a lot of sour, heavy, waxy crude, watery, waxy crude that is in eastern Siberia. But the western Siberia crude, which was sweet, is running out. And they would take the two and mix them together to make a marketable oil that could be sold on the market for a little more money than if they try to sell that eastern heavy Siberian crude. What people don't understand is all oil is not the same. That eastern Siberia crude, you put it in a ship and you ship it somewhere, and the temperature of the water of the ocean cools it down. And by the time it gets where it's going, let's say India, it's pretty much solid. To get it out, they have to heat it to get it out of the ship. Whereas when they mix it with some of the sweet crude, it's a little bit, flows a little better, and it's a more marketable oil that more countries can use. Refineries in India can take that heavy, waxy, watery, solid stuff, and they can refine that. Everybody can't. You know, the Chinese have refineries that can refine it. Everybody else can't. So, the war was about oil and gas, and just now today, 3 years later, it's finally coming to the surface that that's what it was all about. Russia wants the same thing. They want the oil, gas, and the rare earth minerals. So, Sachs is living in a fantasy land, although he's 100% correct. So, listen to what he says. He says they're not very smart people. Also, that was the URL at the top.
United States, the U.S. put on the table December 15th, 2021. I had an hour call with Jake Sullivan in the White House, begging, Jake, avoid the war. You can avoid the war. All you have to do is say NATO will not enlarge to Ukraine. And he said to me, oh, NATO's not going to enlarge to Ukraine. Don't worry about it. I said, Jake, say it publicly. No, we can't say it publicly. Say, Jake, you're going to have a war over something that isn't even going to happen? He said, don't worry, Jeff, there will be no war. These are not very bright people. I'm telling you, if I can give you my honest view, they're not very bright people. And I've dealt with them for more than 40 years. They talk to themselves. They don't talk to anybody else. They play game theory. In non-cooperative game theory, you don't talk to the other side. You just make your strategy. This is the essence of game theory. It's not negotiation theory. It's not peacemaking theory. It is unilateral, non-cooperative theory, if you know formal game theory. That's what they play. It started at the Rand Corporation. That's what they still play. In 2019, there's a paper by Rand, How Do We Extend Russia? Do you know they wrote a paper, which Biden followed, How Do We Annoy Russia? That's literally the strategy. How do we annoy Russia? We're trying to provoke it, trying to make it break apart, maybe have regime change, maybe have unrest, maybe have economic crisis. That's what you call your ally. Are you kidding?
So, I do encourage you to go and watch this entire speech or delivery of remarks. Sachs, love him, like him, or hate him, he's right, but he's dreaming. Because he, like many people, assume intellect is universal across humans. And it's not. Some people are just viscerally aggressive, stupid thieves. They don't know how to do it themselves. They don't understand it. But they will take it from you. They'll steal it. And somehow they think that's what makes them go, what puts them ahead. Now, the Russians have been stealing stuff forever. They tried to steal the Concorde by, stealing the plans, building one of their own. It was called the Tu-144, Tupolev 144 supersonic. Looked just like the Concorde. They crashed it. But that's how the Russians are. They take everything and steal it. That's the Neanderthal DNA in the Russians. There's enough of it here in America. the Neanderthal DNA, you look around, you will find plenty of people with bumps over their eyes, ridges at their eyebrows, slanted back foreheads, and comparatively speaking, small heads. You take a good look at many of the scientists and attorneys, large foreheads, high vertical head, straight up, no bumps over their eyebrows. Those are modern anatomical humans. You can just look it up. Let's look it up. Look up modern anatomical human and look up a Neanderthal skull. And that's what we're dealing with. They've never left the planet. Neanderthals are, the DNA is still around, and it's a problem. It's like trying to raise a wolf as a pet. You raise them from a puppy, yeah, okay. They may not attack you, but they also might, even after you raise them. Wolves are viscerally instinctive, genetic, tribal canines. Now, they'll never be loving. They'll always be aloof. It may be a wolf, it may be a pet. If you raise it from a puppy, you may get away with it. But they're not bred to be domesticated dogs. It sounds crazy. Look it up, as they say. There's a PBS special called Dog Tales. DOGTALES. Not tails as you wag, but tales as in defining the genetics of the modern canine. Look it up. Sachs is right. And what we have is an administration today of completely stupid people. The best way to do it is just nullify this administration completely. They were constitutionally ineligible to take office. Everybody in that administration, legally, by the Constitution, cannot be there because Trump cannot be there because he is a constitutionally ineligible person who Congress never cleared a disability of to be sworn in. They just skipped past the step, counted his votes, and then Roberts had to swear him in. Oops. Okay, so let's close with acts of defiance from Chris Hayes. Not a fan of Chris Hayes. He tries to raise points, make points. He's like a blithering idiot who gets halfway there and then can't close the deal. You know, maybe it's not appropriate for media hosts to present solutions. Maybe their bosses frown on that. But he's making the point here that at least Al Green tried something. Okay, Al Green was talking about filing articles of impeachment a couple of weeks ago. I don't know what he's done since then. All of these representatives who speak to the nation, but you can't talk to them. Many of them have fax machines, and you can send them a fax. They'll get it no matter where it came from. It's not going to be terminated by phone number. But if you send it from a phone number with an area code, they'll know if it came from their district. Some members, like Jasmine Crockett, their fax machine seems to error out every time something is sent. And that's an old attorney trick for hanging up the phone. They see the fax coming in and they will terminate the phone call and will cause an error on the other end. So while they're interested to get on TV or on media and say their piece, anybody who has a solution or tries to present a solution, can't get through to them. Now, here's the URL at the top. You can stop at the T = ampersand 130 because although this is a short clip, that's where you're going to jump to. It's about 2 minutes in. There's the full title, and there's the date, March 6th, it was posted.
They should. A lot of this renewed frustration this week stems from the Democrats' response to Trump's joint address on Tuesday. About 4 minutes into the speech, Congressman Al Green of Texas challenged Trump's claim of a presidential mandate to gut Medicaid.
Mr. Green, take your seat. Take your seat, sir. Take your seat.
And this is the point where, Trump and the Republicans are just intent on ramming a lie down the throat of the American public. Because there's no mandate. Trump barely was elected. It appears that there was a tainted election at that. And because he's constitutionally ineligible, he's an illegitimate president anyway. But, you can't blame the Republicans because the Democrats are letting them get away with it. Now, Al Green's fax machine does work, and I know he got the sample resolution fax that tell them that this is what all you need to do to file it to remove Trump from office. So far, no one has done so. They're all afraid, as George Conway has said. They're all sitting there looking at each other, and they won't move to end this. They won't move to actually enforce the Constitution while they keep talking about the rule of law and enforcing the Constitution and how it's unconstitutional and blah, blah, blah. When stop talking to the American people. You are the ones with the power. It's like the police officer is looking around going, well, who's going to do something? And he's the one wearing the gun and the badge. He's the one with the power to make the arrest. And yet he's looking at the crowd like, somebody do something. It's just absolute ludicrous. So let's go on with what happened here.
Members continue to engage in willful and concerted disruption of proper decorum. The chair now directs the sergeant at arms to restore order. Remove this gentleman from the chamber.
And Green is 77 years old.
Now, Congressman Green was ultimately forcibly removed from the chamber of the House Sergeant at Arms. And he was really the only Democrat who put up that kind of public fight. In response, one anonymous Democrat, who Axios described as a centrist, told the outlet what Green did was inappropriate, and he became the story, not the price of eggs. And I'm sorry, but to me, this is just completely misreading the moment we're in. This fight...
The Democrats who joined in on the motion to censure, the resolution to censor Green, are listed at sadpac.com.
right now ultimately isn't really about the price of eggs. Maybe the politics of the price of eggs matter. They do. That's fine. That's right. And maybe what Congressman Green did was the right thing, and maybe it was the wrong thing. Either way, he's facing the consequences of his actions.
There is no politics to the price of eggs. Price of eggs is a scientific issue that has to do with bird flu having to destroy millions of egg-laying chickens to keep the flu from spreading. And don't know what happens to the meat after that, but it has nothing to do with the Trump administration at this time, because they came in and inherited that bird flu problem. But he should have never promised that he would drop the price of groceries, because that's all people hear. And that's how simple Americans are. The price of eggs. That's how fickle they are. It's ridiculous. Let's go on.
Actions like an adult. Today he was censured by his colleagues, including a handful of Democrats, for his protest, which, again, he broke the rules of the House. The House censured him. He stood in the well of the House to have the resolution read to him, surrounded by dozens of Democratic colleagues who sang, "We shall overcome," in solidarity. But I guess what I'm trying to say here is, at least Green tried something. Now is the time for trying things. Everyone has an obligation as a citizen to defend this country's democracy, this shared project
Here's where the speech pisses me off. Because if you don't know what to try, don't say try something. Because everyone's interpretation of trying something is different. You need to stick to a message. You need to push your representative to file the resolution that would cause Trump's removal. If they don't understand the resolution because they're not an attorney, and many of them aren't, many of these people in Congress are lawmakers and not lawyers. And so what the F are they doing making law in the first place? They don't have a clue what they're doing. How can they support and defend the Constitution when they can't read it to interpret how to support and defend the Constitution? When they read something, or when the Supreme Court writes an order, like in Trump v. Anderson, that confuses them because they can't read it, they just give up. Okay, the order is very simple to read. You just have to pick it apart for what it says. It just says things at various points throughout the order. In the beginning, it defines constitutionally ineligible because of what he did January 6th. The Supreme Court has no issue with that. In fact, they have no issue with the entire Colorado procedure and final ruling. They just said a state can't do that. So he's constitutionally ineligible. The court did not say he is not. Then it goes on to say, because a state can't do that for a federal candidate and only for a state candidate, that Congress is the one who can do that. Congress is the one who has the duty to do that and can even do it post-election. And they talk about private legislation. And it's very simple. And they said, then they said for state legislation, it has to have this, 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 and this. And that's where everybody gets confused again. Forget the legislation. It's not needed in terms of legislation that passes both houses and the president has to sign. Private legislation can simply be enforcement of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, calling for the amnesty vote. It's that simple. But, these people run for office and they don't have a legal clue what they're doing. So this is what we got. People who are brainless, even those who are attorneys.
By any peaceful and democratic means necessary. Because Trump and the MAGA movement are organized right now, and their intentions could not be clearer. The world's richest man.
Now, here's the problem I also have. Chris Hayes is married to an attorney. Can't he do a better job of delivering this rather than just glittering generalities? I would hope so. But it's not, apparently not. But he's the only one on media saying so.
Unilaterally controls the purse strings of the federal government. Donald Trump is referring to himself as America's king. That's not some, hysterical lib. He calls himself a king. 6 weeks in, they are flirting with prosecuting their political enemies. They have a clear vision of a presidential dictatorship. It's everyone's job to resist. And what we're seeing now is a weird attempt to rewrite the history of the first Trump administration, that the so-called resistance from back then was a failure. But it wasn't a failure. There are millions of people
It's not about resist. It's about organize a solution. A resistance, a mass protest, a bunch of people all hollering something different is not a solution. And this is where Chris Hayes is irresponsible. Stop sitting up there amphorously saying, resist, resist. How? To what end? To do what? Well, only a congressional member can resist. Only a congressional member can file the resolution or something like it. And not only does this have to do with Trump, it has to do with any officer of the United States who has sworn an oath to the Constitution and is now in rebellion to it. They can all be removed from office, including members of Congress. When they cannot defend their actions, and it's anti-Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, where it's rebellion to the Constitution, they will end up removed from office. The conclusion to Section 3 of the 14th Amendment is either removal of the disability, which is a bar to office, automatic bar to office. If you are in office, that bar to office activates upon the vote failure to relieve that bar to office, and you must then vacate the office. It's a short form of quo warranto. It's a short form of impeachment. There is nothing needed because the Constitution actually throws you out. Hayes doesn't understand that.
Marching in the streets the day after Trump was inaugurated the first time. Democrats were able to organize and beat back the repeal of the Affordable Care Act not once but twice, when Republicans had a larger House majority than they do now. That resistance helped flip the House to the Democrats in 2018. It fed into the largest popular uprising we've seen in a generation, at least in 2020, during an election year. And in that year, Democrats flipped the Senate, unseated an incumbent Republican president for the first time in nearly 30 years, and won the popular vote by 4.5 points. So now all of that has been rewritten as a failure, which in turn has convinced folks they just need to keep their heads down.
What is your point? You know, history has no point. It's over. It's gone. What about today? What about the solution moving forward? This is where Hayes and anybody else on media and social media doesn't seem to be able to point to the solution. Today, we need the resolution.
And hope they can run on egg prices in 2 years. Not only is that strategy morally wrong in my view, but more importantly, for my purposes here, it's strategically bankrupt. Resistance was the right course of action in 2017.
Strategically bankrupt is correct because you don't have a solution. Without a solution, yeah, you're strategically bankrupt. So if you cannot present the solution as someone else, somewhere else said, you should shut up. I think it was Evan Bernick further on in the Jessica Denson interview. If you don't have a solution, you should shut up.
It's the right course of action now. And folks at the grassroots level understand it. We saw it when people staged their own protests outside Tesla dealerships, protests which are being organized and growing every single weekend, or when so many folks showed up to express their frustration at the Republican congressman. The head of the National Republican Congressional Committee had to tell his members to stop holding town halls. Or when a tiny government agency that is independent by law, the U.S. African Development Foundation, effectively told Elon Musk and his 20-year-olds in backpacks to go to hell. and refused to let his employees of the so-called efficiency project even enter into their office space. Or, as my friend Alex Wagner is reporting, when regular folks show up to meetings with state attorneys general to strategize on how they can best push back against Elon Musk and Donald Trump's dismantling of the government.
I think the attorneys general believe that a big part of stopping this insanity is enlisting the American people.
Yeah.
And this is going to be a people-powered movement along with the AGs filing these lawsuits. So obviously...
Bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. The people cannot do anything. The election is over. The election really is not the power anyway. The power is in Congress. Stop going to the people. You need to push the members of Congress or file litigation to force a member of Congress to call for the amnesty vote and prosecute Section 3 of the 14th Amendment repeatedly. There are many of those such resolutions that can be filed because not only Trump, members of Congress, these heads of these agencies who have been sworn in, even some judges have violated the Constitution. And a Section 3 of the 14th Amendment prosecution in Congress will start to pick Congress clean. Forget the protests.
We will continue to file these lawsuits, continue to protect America from this out-of-control billionaire and president. But ultimately, we also have to make sure that these stories that are American stories and stories of people who are being devastated by these cuts are told so that everybody knows what's happening. And I think we learned a heck of a lot today.
Yeah.
Resistance requires people to activate and coordinate and organize and to work together. The struggle to preserve American democracy is just on all of us.
Now he said it. Activate, organize, coordinate, and work together. You're not presenting the end result. What are you working together on? How do you fix this? And you have to start with a thesis that fixes this. Trump is constitutionally ineligible to hold office. He's not disqualified yet. Congress can still disqualify him, and Congress is the only way he will be disqualified. You need to push someone in Congress to file the required resolution that will call for the amnesty vote, and if he doesn't reach the 2/3 majority, based on the conduct he has done in the past, which violates Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, then he's disqualified. This is where people like Jessica Denson and others who cannot seem to get the language right in the order it is required to be spoken are making a mess of things. Denson doesn't understand. Trump is not disqualified right now. He is not illegal right now. What was illegal was counting his votes. But since Congress blew past that, counted the votes without objection, because quite frankly, the ECRA of 2022 was a setup that no one member could make the objection. No one member could make the objection under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. It required 1/5 of both houses on a joint objection for it to be considered. And they're all scared. You have chickens, feckless, gutless chickens in the Congress. That's the hard and fast story here. So let's finish up with what Chris is saying.
It would be great if professional Democratic politicians got on board, but they're not the ones who are going to lead the charge. The American people will.
And you're wrong. The American people have no power. They have the power of noise. These professional politicians are who must be forced to do their job. A lawsuit can be filed in mandamus many times to make them do their job, so long as it can be shown that they have a duty to do it, and they do. Evan Bernick said it, probably not in the clip that was shown, but you can go back and watch that whole Jessica Denson interview, where the rest of it he's talking about Section 1 of the 14th Amendment, his duty, and how congressional members have a duty to enforce Section 1 and Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, because they have the power to enforce the 14th Amendment completely by Section 5. So the courts really don't have a place in this. For Trump actually making this birthright citizenship executive order, that was a Section 3 of the 14th Amendment violation. You cannot write an executive order that's counter to the Constitution. This is where Congress needed to file prosecution under Section 3 that Trump was violating his office, his oath of office. And they should have been doing that repeatedly, over and over and over again. And, you know, Chris Murphy had a clip of all the things that Trump has done in just 6 weeks that are corruption. You can find it at sadpack.com. I'm not going to put it here because it's going to make the video much longer. But that can easily just be rolled into a Section 3 of the 14th Amendment prosecution. Unfortunately, Jessica Denson, waving her arms all around, sitting there, you know, not being precise in language, is just looking like a crazy woman, and she's not helping. She's really, really, really not helping. She thinks she is, but, you know, in the end, she gets advertising money every time she puts a video out. If you understand that this is the problem, then, you know, like this video, subscribe to the channel. Do not post videos regularly, but we don't have a following, you know, because followings take time to become populists. YouTube won't promote your video until you are, you know, over 1,000 whatever likes and subscribers. So Jessica and others who are riding on the coattails of what they already have done because of the election keep getting it wrong, and they're not helping. So like and subscribe, and stay tuned for the next video. Don't know when it'll be released, but this is the issue. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment is not being prosecuted properly. It is not automatic. It is not automatic like Jessica thinks it is. You know, you're not disqualified just because you violated it. You are constitutionally ineligible because you violated it. And to be disqualified, Congress must act, or it's the same as the murder that occurred and nobody saw it and nobody knows it happened. It didn't happen. So until Congress steps forward as a witness and says it and puts it into the public record, into the public register, into the congressional records, it didn't happen. At that point, when he fails a 2/3 majority vote, he's disqualified. And the disqualification causes his automatic removal from office.